Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paul's Sports Takes. Today is finally the day for my women's track and field outdoor season preview. I've been working on this one for about a week now. There was a lot of research that went into it, and I'm going to do my best to make this not super long. This women's season is going to be insane. Pretty much every single event has there's only a couple events where you can really pick out a clear favorite when it comes to what's going to go down in Paris in August. It is going to be so much fun all year to watch how this season is going to play out, and we have a lot to talk about. So we'll keep the intro kind of short and let's get into it. All right, we're going to be starting off with the sprinting event. So first, naturally, will be the 100-meter dash. This event was probably the most intense competitive event on the women's side last year. Every single Diamond League race, every meet was just so phenomenal. And moving into 2024, I see kind of the contenders in this event in three tiers. That top tier is going to be Sha'Carri Richardson and Shericka Jackson. The top two in Budapest last year. Last year, they both ran a PB of 10:65, which was the joint world lead. That also puts them as the joint fifth fastest woman in history. When looking at the top times last year, each of them ran three of the top seven times. Marie-Josee Talu had that seventh time that did not belong to either one of them, but we'll get to her in a second. They were both head and shoulders above the rest of the world last year when it comes to speed and consistency. Obviously, Sha'Carri winning the gold medal in Budapest was kind of like the highlight of the year in that event, obviously. And it also was a really great kind of jumping off point for Sha'Carri's international career, with that being her first major global championships. But I have a feeling moving into this Olympic year that Shericka Jackson did not take that loss very lightly. Obviously, we saw her come back at the Prefontaine Classic a month or so after the World Championships last year, and she did beat Sha'Carri Richardson in the 100. And we'll talk about the 200 in a couple minutes, but you know Shericka is going to be coming for that double in Paris with every fiber of her being. So those two, I think they'll kind of be at the top of the pack again, especially if we can continue, if we can expect to continue to see some progression from Sha'Carri. They together could do something very special. The next tier is two athletes in Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce and Marie-Josee Talu that were both phenomenal last year, but just a step behind the top two. Obviously, with Shelly, you saw her start her season really late, and the fact that she was even able to get up into, I think she ran 10:77 in Budapest, I want to say. The fact that she was even able to do that with how late her season started and the injury she was working through at the start of the season is remarkable. And, she is obviously getting up there in age, but it's Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, so that does not matter at all. Her 2022 season was one of the most insane things ever. She ran under 10.7 in that one season, three times more than anybody else in history has ran under 10.7 in their career. So that's pretty insane. And then Marie-Josee Talu, it feels like she is just every year running times in the mid 10.7s consistently, and then somehow finding a way to end up in fourth at the global championships. And so there's no reason to expect a kind of decline from her this year. So I see that trend kind of continuing. Obviously, Shelly could, with that full year, a full off season of being healthy and training, moving into her last Olympics, even though she said Tokyo is supposed to be her last Olympics. So I don't know. Maybe she'll be there in LA still somehow. But moving into her last Olympics, obviously, I would not be surprised by any stretch of the imagination if she got back into her 2022 form and we did see her win her third Olympic gold. But moving into the season without seeing any of that happen yet, I am putting her just the smallest step behind Sha'Carri and Shericka. The third tier is three athletes that I think have very intriguing cases. We'll start with Julian Alfred, the 60-meter world indoor champion a couple weeks ago in Glasgow. And her 2023 season was really impressive in the 100 and the 200. But she had the kind of fallback of the fact that she was a collegiate athlete last year. So she was running like three times as many races at a minimum, as opposed to some of her professional counterparts when it came to Budapest, like Sha'Carri and Shericka. And, well, Shelly only ran like 5 races last year, so she's kind of an outlier. But my point still stands. So she had a lot more wear in her legs when it came to the World Championships. This year, she is a professional. I believe she said she's straying away from the 200. I believe I've heard some things that she doesn't really like running the 200. So if she's focusing solely on the 100 and she's not going to be as worn out coming into the Olympics as she was last year, she could be tremendously dangerous, especially seeing how well she ran indoors this year. The next athlete, also building off a strong indoor season, is Eva Svoboda. And Svoboda is an athlete who, for a long time, was purely a 60-meter specialist. She finally broke 7 in 2022 and then came up just short off the podium in Belgrade at the World Indoors. And then she just couldn't really put together her final 40 when she moved outdoors. Last year, we saw her finally break that 11-second barrier. She ended up running as fast as 10:94 in Budapest. I believe she ended up in 6th, I want to say. So she definitely took a step forward. And then we moved this indoor season. She set a new PB in the semifinals in Glasgow. She ran 6:98. And then she also ran 7 flat in the finals. So she is consistently as fast as she's ever been indoors. And the thing is that last year when she made those huge strides forwards in the 100, she was only running 7:09 in the 60. So obviously those aren't always perfect one-to-one comparisons, but the fact that she took such a big step forward in the 100 last year while having somewhat of a down year in the 60 makes you very excited for what her prospects could be with her best year yet in the 60 when we move outdoors to the 100. Finally, the last athlete on here is obviously Elaine Thompson-Herah of Jamaica, the reigning double-double Olympic champion, 100 and 200-meter gold in both Rio and in Tokyo. She was struggling through injuries a lot last year. She failed to make the Jamaican team individually in the 100 or the 200 for Budapest last year, which was astounding. But then after the World Championships, you really saw her start to pick it up. And she ended up running 10:79 at pre last year. So, despite the fact that she did not break 11 seconds until September, she ended out her season running 10:92, 10:84, and then 10:79. So, with a full off season of being healthy and moving into another Olympic year with her chance to do something that no woman has ever done before, you cannot count out Elaine Thompson-Herah. And I am incredibly, incredibly excited to see what she's able to put together in both the 100 and the 200 this year. Speaking of the 200, the biggest storyline this year is going to be Shericka Jackson against the clock once again, because unless if Elaine Thompson-Herah can come all the way back to her low 21.5 form we saw in Tokyo, nobody can really test Shericka Jackson completely. Gabby Thomas runs a really good race. She can get kind of close, but it's still almost a full 2/10 difference between their PBs. So I would be incredibly surprised if, barring injury, God forbid, anyone other than Shericka Jackson is on top of the podium in Paris when it comes to the 200. It's really just going to be a question of if she can finally break 21:34, which is Flojo's record from 88. There are 3 other strong contenders. 2 of them I've already mentioned, in Gabby Thomas and Elaine Thompson-Herah. But also it will be very interesting to see Sha'Carri Richardson's improvement, because we saw her run a blisteringly fast wind-aided time last year. And then she also ran a couple really solid times, ended up taking the bronze in Budapest. So, especially if Julian Alfred isn't running the 200, maybe we'll see Abby Steiner come back into form a little bit. But I think the top 4, as we kind of move towards Paris, are going to be Shericka Jackson, Gabby Thomas, Elaine Thompson-Herah, and Sha'Carri Richardson. Probably in that order. I would love to see Elaine Thompson-Herah fully get back into her 2021 form, and it's entirely a possibility. I'm just not entirely banking on that right now. In the 400 meters, Shaunae Miller-Weibo is back, thank goodness. She gave birth to her first child last April and then somehow still ran in Budapest. Obviously, she wasn't entirely in shape, So she didn't make it out of the heats, but the fact that she was able to run anything close to a world class time in an event as taxing as the 400 pretty much 3 months after giving birth is absolutely ridiculous. But now she's had a whole off season to get back into a regular training regimen. So if she can get back to her old form, she will most likely dominate because that old form is the sixth fastest woman in history and the reigning two-time Olympic champion. But that by no means it will be a cakewalk for her walking back into this event and going for that Olympic three-peat. Chief amongst those competitors are going to be Marilady Paulino of the Dominican Republic, who is obviously the 2023 world champion in this event, and she just ran some blisteringly fast times towards the end of last year. And then a couple other competitors behind her. Britton Wilson, I'm not entirely sure what her plans are because she is absurdly good at both the 400 and the 400 hurdles. So I'm not sure which one she is going to be focusing on because I'm pretty sure it's impossible to do a double this year with the way the schedules are set up for both the USA Olympic trials and in Paris. So I don't know which one she's going to be focusing on, but whichever one, she will be a threat in that event. Rashida Adeleke of Ireland is also going to be a strong competitor there. Then we got Natalia Kaczmarek of Poland, the silver medalist from Budapest last year. Salah Nasser is the third fastest woman in history, and she returned from a lengthy suspension last year. And she was running pretty solid times at the start of the season, but she did not compete in Budapest. So I assume if she's fully back on the circuit next year, she will be a big threat. Lieke Klaver of the Netherlands, who we just saw win the silver medal at World Indoors with some really impressive times. She looks to be a threat outdoors as well. And then Shada Williams of Barbados has won bronze medals in Eugene and Budapest, so she will definitely be a contender as well. When it comes to the women's 100-meter hurdles, it is insane because there are just everyone is so close together running these ridiculously historically fast times. And when it comes time for the world championships, it really feels like you can just like pull any one of them out of a hat and they could end up winning. You've got Danielle Williams, who won gold last year, Toby Amusan, the world record holder, Jasmine Camacho Quinn, the reigning Olympic champion from Tokyo, Devin Charlton, who is the world indoor 60-meter hurdles champion and just broke the world record in that event, Tia Jones, who also broke the world record in that event before Devin Charlton broke it again. Kenny Harrison and Nia Ali as well, who are always just so consistent in those low 12.4s, 12.3 range. Kenny Harrison last year in Budapest in the heats and the semifinals ran a couple of the fastest times in history, which was just wild to see in rounds of a championship event like that. And then you also have Masai Russell and Aaliyah Armstrong and Alicia Johnson. It's just, especially in the U.S., it's ridiculously deep. And the fact that only 3 of those women are going to make the team is crazy. But then in the world as a whole right now, it's impossible to say any one of them just stands out as a pure favorite because it is so deep and that is so awesome. I am so incredibly excited for the women's 400-meter hurdles this year because of one woman, and that woman's name is Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Well, kind of 2 women because Femke Bol as well. I don't want to disrespect her. But Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is back in the 400 hurdles this year after, just dabbling in the flat 4 last year, where in like 3 races, she became the 10th fastest woman ever and probably would have won gold outdoors. Sorry, Marilady Polino. I think Sydney would have beat you if she would have went to Budapest, but she pulled out at the last minute. But she's back in the 400 hurdles this year, and it's going to be very interesting to see because Femke Bol obviously dominated last year without Sydney there, and she kind of approached Sydney's world record of 50.68, but I think people were hoping she would get a little bit closer. Femke only ran 51.45 last year. If we put the 2 of them in a race, we could see something of like men's Tokyo 2020 properties happening, which would be mind-boggling. The unfortunate thing is that since Sydney races so infrequently, I don't know if they will race each other before Paris, but all I know is that as long as the injury gods cooperate with us, the women's 400-meter hurdles final in Paris is going to be one of the greatest track and field events in history. And then outside of those top two, obviously, I have to give a shout out to the rest of the podium from last year, and Shamir Little of the US and Rochelle Clayton of Jamaica. They both should have a spirited battle for that bronze medal. Moving up to the mid distance and distance events, we're going to start with the 800, and the place to start in the 800 is obviously with Athing Mu. She is not the reigning world champion. She only took bronze in Budapest last year, but it was a really weird 2023 for Athing Mu where she ran an 800 in, I think, June. She ran pretty well, like 158 something. And then her and Bobby Kersey decided she was going to run the 1500 at the U.S. Championships, despite the fact that she had ran one 1500-meter race in 2021, and that's the only time she's ran a 1500 since 2018. But she decided she's going to run it at U.S. Nationals for the first time, and she takes second, which is pretty ridiculous, but also it's Athing Mu, so not entirely surprising. And then we did not know if she was going to run or what event she was going to run in Budapest up until like a week before. And then she was listed on the 800-meter start list, but we didn't know if she was actually going to run. And then she ends up running, and she manages a bronze. And then she talks about how there's been a lot of pressure and expectation put upon her, which makes sense when you win Olympic gold at 19 and then world champion at 20. And then there's just so everybody's eyes are on you. And so it's very understandable the kind of issues she was dealing with throughout the season last year. But then after the World Championships, she went to the Prefontaine Classic and ran 1:54.97, which is a time that this century only Pamela Gelimo and Castor Semenya have ran faster. So she's still Athing Mu. There's no doubt about that. And I think she has to be the favorite in this event going into 2024, depending on if she runs it, I guess. I don't know if there'd be a world where she would still run 1500s this year, but you never know with Bobby Kersey, so we'll see what happens. And then you also have the other two members of the podium from the last two World Outdoor Championships in Keely Hodgkinson and Mary Marat. Marat comes into 2024 as the reigning world champion from Budapest, and then Keely Hodgkinson is coming in with 3 straight silver medals from Tokyo, Eugene, and Budapest. So she is going to be doing everything in her power to break that cycle and finally get Olympic gold this year. There are 3 more athletes that I want to talk about before we move on to the 1500, and that is Sige Daguma of Ethiopia, who is the world indoor champion from Glasgow, and she currently is the world leader outdoors, although it is very early in the season, so we can't really put too much stock in that. But she's ran 157 mid outdoors already. Gemma Reekie as well is the silver medalist from World Indoors, and she had the world lead indoors for most of the season, I believe, but she wasn't able to take down Daguma in a more tactical race in the final at World Indoors. And then finally, there's also Natoya Gultopin of Jamaica. She was incredibly strong all year in 2023, had a little bit of a stumble in Budapest, but she capped it off with a massive PB at the Prefontaine Classic, and that just incredibly fast race where we also saw Athing Mu and Keely Hodgkinson run really fast times. She only ran indoors this year at World Indoors, and she ran really well in the prelims and then struggled in the final. But she definitely, if she can get rounded into form, which there's no reason to believe she won't be, she could definitely be a contender as well. Moving up to the 1500, the conversation starts with Faith Kipyegon, the reigning 2-time world champion, reigning 2-time Olympic champion, world record holder. She is aiming to become the first person, male or female, in history to three-peat the 1500 at the Olympics. I have no doubts that she will be able to do that. There is an incredibly strong contingent behind Kipyegon, though, don't get me wrong, including a group of 5 Ethiopians who combined for 5 of the 6 fastest times indoors this season in the 1500, and that would be Ferweni Hailu, Daribe Woteji, Berke Halom, Hirut Mashesha, and Tigist Girma. The 6th athlete in that top 6 when it comes to the indoor 1500 this year is none other than Gudaf Sagai, who is most likely going to be doing the 5:10 double again in Paris. But if she feels like running the 1500, I have no doubt that she will be Kipyegon's main competitor because she is just that insane at everything that she does. Alongside that incredibly strong, also incredibly young group of Ethiopians, you also have Safan Hassan, who is currently the seventh fastest athlete ever over the event. But if you take out the times by four Chinese women in the 90s that were almost assuredly PED aided, she's the third fastest athlete in history. And I would not be surprised at all if Safan Hassan is going for the 1500, 5K, 10K triple again, because it's Safan Hassan. That's just what she does. She doesn't like days off. You also have El Perger St. Pierre, who gave birth at the start of last year and missed most of 2023. But she came back with one of the fastest times in history, as well as a world indoor title in the 3K. And her best event is definitely the 15. So seeing her do that at a longer distance bodes very well for what she'll be able to do in the 1500 this year. And this conversation obviously would not be complete without also mentioning the silver and bronze medalists from the World Indoor Championships this year in Americans Nikki Hiltz and Emily McKay. Moving on up to the 5K, this is such an awesome race because we currently have the four fastest women in history all active. And so all I'm saying is put Gudaf Sagai, the world record holder, Faith Kipyegon, who's second all time, Beatrice Chebet, who's third all time, and Letesenbet Gide, who's fourth all time. Put all four of them in the same Diamond League 5K race and just see what happens. I guarantee you the 14-minute barrier will be broken. And just saying that they're the top four fastest ever feels like it's leaving out a little bit of context because you need to understand how big that gap is. Because Letesenbet Gide is the fourth athlete in this list. And her best time of 14:06 something is a little under 5 seconds faster than the fifth fastest athlete ever. And Gudaf Sagai is 11 full seconds faster than that the fifth fastest athlete ever. So it is such a big gap between those four women. But here's the thing, Safan Hassan also in the mix for this event, like I said. So if she got thrown in this magic dream 5K Diamond League race, I'm imagining, she could also enter that group. I have no doubts about that. When it comes to what would actually happen in Paris, I really don't know because obviously Sagai is the world record holder, but Faith Kipyegon has not lost a major championship final since Doha 2019 in the 1500 when she lost to Safan Hassan, who needed to run that previously mentioned seventh/third fastest time ever to do it. So, and she's gotten so much faster since that race because in that race, Kipyegon ran what was then her personal best in the 1500, and that was like 3:52, and now she's broken 3:50. So it's just, this race would be phenomenal as a Diamond League race or at the Olympics, and I can't wait to see either one of those happen. The longest event on the track, the 10K, is another very interesting one where we have, once again, Gudaf Sagai, who was the world leader last year and the world champion, but Letesenbet Gide is the world record holder, and also, once again, Safan Hassan runs this race as well, because of course she does. Safan Hassan, just so you guys can kind of understand how insane her range is. Last year, she ran a marathon, and this marathon is the second fastest time ever. And the thing is that if she would have ran this marathon 2 weeks earlier, so say she runs this before Tigges Desefa just obliterates the record books and runs her marathon world record, then at the same time, Safan Hassan would have the third, technically, by my markings, the third fastest 1500 meter time in history, as well as the fastest marathon time in history. That is simply mind-boggling. And Safan Hassan last year in Budapest had, depending on who you ask, maybe had the gold medal wrapped up in the 10K. Maybe Sagai would have passed her regardless, but she tripped with like 20 meters to the finish line. So she went from first/second down to 11th. And so that's something that can't simply be forgotten about when we move into 2024, is that Safan Hassan still is that good at everything. And then if having those three women all in the mix for this event wasn't enough, Sige Gebreselassie ran 29:48 just 2 weeks ago to currently have the world lead, and that also makes her the ninth fastest athlete ever. So it's just every single women's distance race is so remarkable right now. And it is truly, truly awesome. And I really hope that I am able to convey right now just a shred of how exciting this season is going to be. But guess what? We're not done because we still have the 3,000-meter steeplechase to talk about. This event is just as good as all the other distance events, maybe better, because the top three athletes in this event, you have Beatrice Chepkoech, the world record holder. You have Winfred Yavi, the world champion from 2023. And then you also have Nora Gerudo, who is the world champion from 2022. And she was suspended last year, but her suspension was revoked last fall. So I believe she's back to competing this year. And those three women, among them, have 6 of the 7 fastest times in history. Beatrice Heptathlon has the world record and also the 3rd fastest time ever. Winfred Yavi has the 2nd and the 7th fastest times ever. And then Nora Gerudo has the 5th and the 6th fastest times ever. So the only one that's missing is that number 4 spot. And they're all going to be racing all the time this year. And because there's less steeplechasers necessarily than there are in some of the other distance events. So at Diamond League meets, usually they do race each other, and it's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. And then, so they will probably be the podium in all likelihood when it comes to Paris. But then you also have a really strong contingent behind them in Jacqueline Chepkoech, and then you also have Faith Chirodich and Sembo Alameu. Time for the jumps now. And like I've said before, and this will be the last time I say this, I just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands it. The jumps are the area of events that I follow the least and know the least about. So I'm trying to get better there, but I just want to put that out there, and I apologize if I miss anyone. Please let me know in the comments if there's someone that you feel has been left out. We're going to start with the high jump, and this one really, I think, is going to be kind of what it has been the last 2 years now, and it's mostly going to be Yaroslav Mahouchik versus Nikola Olaslagers. Mahouchik is such an incredible talent. She currently is tied for the 7th best jump all time. She currently has the world lead this year at 2 meters 4, but she was defeated in Glasgow by Nikola Olaslagers, who won her first global title. And Nikola Olaslagers is just a hair behind her at 2:03 right now. So they are just going to be doing battle all year, and it will be so much fun to watch. But they are by no means the only contenders for either bronze or maybe jumping up to silver or maybe jumping up to take gold like she did in Eugene. You have Eleanor Patterson, also of Australia, along with Nikola Olaslagers. You also have Rachel Glenn and Lamara Diston, who are 2 current NCAA athletes who have both cleared 2 meters indoors this year. So their prospects for this outdoor season are very bright right now. And then you also have Vashti Cunningham, who is always so consistent at USA Championships and then struggles. She got a couple medals at World Indoors, but she has yet to find her way onto the podium at an outdoor global championship. So maybe 2024 will finally be the year. In the pole vault, the story coming into 2024 is Katie Moon, as she's looking to claim her 4th straight global title outdoors, because she won in Tokyo, she won in Eugene, and then she shared the gold with Nina Kennedy last year in Budapest. But coming into this year, it feels like she is less of a favorite than she was going into either 2022 or 2023. She already was only able to take home a bronze at World Indoors, but she usually doesn't perform as well indoors. She took a silver in Belgrade in 2022 and then still went on to take the gold medal outdoors. So that's not really something that's too big of a concern. But the field behind her feels like it's a lot stronger than it has been in the last couple of years. Obviously, led by Nina Kennedy, who was the world leader last year at 491. And then, like I said, tied Katie Moon for that gold medal in Budapest. You also have Eliza McCartney and Molly Cottery. Cottery is the world indoor champion from Glasgow. And then Wilma Murdo, she really struggled in Glasgow, which was pretty surprising. She had been jumping pretty well indoors up to that point, but she took the bronze medal last year behind Moon and Kennedy in Budapest, and she's always just super consistent when it comes to outdoors. So those 4 definitely are probably the four most likely challengers to break up this incredible run that Katie Moon has been on outdoors. The women's long jump is going to be one that you need to keep your eye on all year. The top three competing are going to be Tara Davis Woodhull, the world indoor champion, current world leader at a mark of 7:18. You also have Ivana Violetta, who is the world champion from Budapest last year, and she jumped 7:14 in Budapest, which was her best mark since like 2017 or something. So it was really good to see her get into a form we haven't seen her in quite a while. Finally, you also have Malaika Mahambo returning to the outdoor scene, who is the 12th farthest jumper in history. She is the reigning two-time world champion when she competes, because she did not compete in Budapest last year. She is also the Olympic champion from Tokyo. And when she's on, it's very hard to find anyone in the world that can touch her. But with the way that Tara Davis Woodall jumped indoors this year, that is going to be an absolute battle if they can both be at the peak of their powers as we come to some of the later Diamond League meets in this season and as we move in towards Paris. That is just going to be awesome to watch. And then obviously you can't forget Violetta, like I said, who seems to be in pretty good shape right now. But there's also, believe it or not, a very strong group of women behind them. You've got Essa Brume of Nigeria, Larissa Iapicino of Italy, Akelia Smith of Jamaica, and then Jasmine Moore and Monet Nichols of the U.S. Monet Nichols took the silver medal behind Tara Davis Woodhull in Glasgow. So it is going to be an incredibly deep field in that event this year. But in terms of getting on the podium in Paris, it will be a monumental challenge for any of those women I previously mentioned, I think, to topple any of the big three. Finally, in the triple jump, it's Yulimar Rojas, as it always is. The last time that she lost a non-qualifying competition was August of 2019. So she's pretty ridiculous. The just looking at the record books of the women's triple jump is astounding. I'll put some of it up here because I didn't write the numbers down, but just how good she is ridiculous. And, you know, she didn't compete indoors this year, so she let someone else win a global medal for the first time in forever. And when it comes to global championships that she actually competes in, it feels like in Budapest last year, that's the closest that anybody's got to her in a very long time. Because she gave everyone 5 rounds. She was like, I'm just going to sit back in 8th, let you guys do your thing, see what everyone can do. And then in the 6th round, she was like, okay, that was cute, but I'm still better than all of you. And I'm just going to go out to 15:08 without even trying. And I'm going to win my 4th world title. So, yeah, if I think that is the closest anyone is going to get to her for quite a while. And that is by no means any sort of disrespect to the field behind her. Taya LaFond, who just won the world indoor title, cleared 15 for the first time. She's definitely going to be a threat. You also have Leonis Perez Hernandez, Marina Beck Romanchuk, Shanika Ricketts, also Jasmine Moore, again, because she's ridiculous, Katura Orji. But when it comes to unseating the GOAT, I don't see it happening. But just because it feels like we're going into the year knowing who's going to win the Olympic gold, that by no means that this is going to be a boring season in this event. We definitely could see throughout the course of the year like 6 or 7 women clear 15 meters, which would be ridiculous, but it is entirely in the realm of possibility. One final note on the long jump and triple jump. While I'm wearing this shirt, I just want to talk a little bit about how insane Jasmine Moore is. She's currently the only active jumper that has cleared 15 meters in the triple jump and 7 meters in the long jump. Her best marks usually have come indoors pretty early on in the season in March or February. So she hasn't really competed that well when it comes to global outdoor championships that she's been at. She's now been to Tokyo, Eugene, and Budapest. But I think now this is going to be her first full season as a professional. She can kind of time her season out more normally. And I think she definitely can be we saw her in Glasgow. She qualified for both the long jump and the triple jump, but she only decided to jump the triple jump in the World Indoors. So we'll see what her plans look like as the season moves along. but she is definitely not an athlete that I would be sleeping on in either event. Oh boy, it's time for the throws. We're going to start with discus. When it comes to the discus, I feel like there are 5 athletes that are kind of clear of the rest of the world right now, and that is Valerie Allman, Sandra Perkovic, Jorinda Van Klinken, Lagi Tasaga, and Bin Feng. The best female discus thrower in the world is Valerie Allman. Now, she obviously has not won either of the last 2 world championships. That does not mean that she is not the best thrower in the world. It means that back-to-back years, she had 2022 was a little bit different because she did get the bronze medal behind both Bin Feng and Sandra Perkovic, but she had both meets. 2 people have the best days of their life against her, while she threw like 68 mid in Eugene and then 69 low in Budapest. And it's just, to some extent, you kind of feel bad for her because she's had the world lead now 4 years in a row. She's thrown the farthest anyone has since like the late 90s, I think. She is so good. And it's unfortunate that she hasn't been able to completely put it together in the same way we know she can on the biggest stage. And like obviously like 69 low and 68 mid are phenomenal marks, but we do know she has 70 plus in her. So it's kind of impossible to be harsh on someone that is that good, but it just is something that's worth pointing out. The reigning world champion is Lagi Tasaga, also of the U.S. Just massive breakthrough last year in Budapest. Then she backed it up at the Prefontaine Classic with another massive throw. So I don't think that was a fluke by any means, and it's going to be very interesting to see what she can do this year. Maybe she'll attack and pass the 70-meter barrier. That would be awesome. Bin Feng of China had that kind of breakout in 2022 where she PB'd by over 3 meters at the World Championships, which is just astounding. And she was kind of flying under the radar last year, but still ended up medaling with a bronze medal in Budapest. Jorinda Van Klinken is someone that I'm very excited to watch because the toll of a collegiate season doesn't really have the same effect on throwers as it does on, say, jumpers and sprinters. Like, look at Miklas Alekna, for example, and Cameron Rogers, because they've performed really well at global events while also having a collegiate season behind them. But still, she does compete a lot indoors and outdoors as a collegiate athlete. But she's fully a professional this year, and she is she is the best shot put discus double in the world right now, male or female, I would say. Maybe Roger Stona on the men's side might be comparatively a little bit better, but Jorinda Van Klinken is one of 4 women since 2000 to break 70 meters in the discus, and she's also thrown 1957, I think, in the shot put. So she's really good, and she could definitely factor in on both events this year. She's taken 4th place in both of the last 2 outdoor championships. I think this is the year she finally breaks through and gets that first medal. I really hope it is. She struggled somewhat in shot put indoors this season, but I would not put too much stake in that when projecting her outdoor season, especially for discus. Jorinda Van Klinken is definitely going to be one to watch in terms of Paris this year. Finally, in that group, I also mentioned Sandra Perkovic, who she is theoretically getting up there in age, but she clearly refuses to acknowledge that because she's still just doing incredible things as probably the greatest female discus thrower of all time. I don't know. I would need to do more research to make a super solid claim on that, but that's what my gut's telling me right now. But she's insane. She has so many medals throughout her career, and the fact that she is still at this top upper echelon of world discus right now in the year 2024 is pretty ridiculous. Moving on to the shot put. A lot of this is going to be somewhat regurgitated from my article that was published in Sidious Mag earlier this week. So I don't know if any of you guys have had a chance to read that, but I will link it down in the description. But for the women's shot put, the world indoor champion this year was Sarah Mitten of Canada, and her ascension over the last 3 years has just been truly ridiculous. And she showed some clutchness with a really big 4th round throw to take that world title. Then she also threw another mark better than her already winning throw in the 6th round. So she looks primed to do something absolutely massive when it comes to Paris this year. She has improved her finish at each of the last 4 global championships. And in Tokyo, she finished 28th out of 32 competitors. I don't think that's going to happen again this year. Chase Jackson is the reigning 2-time world outdoor champion. Nay Ely, she got married in the off season, and she got hurt. Like the day before World Indoors, only through 1967 for bronze, but she threw 20 plus at USA Indoors a week or two before that. And she also said that her and her coach are working on implementing the Krauser slide into her throw, which is an incredibly exciting prospect. And, last year I was maybe a little bit down on Chase because she was struggling in the early parts of her outdoor season, but then she still ended up breaking the American record. So I'm not going to doubt anything that Chase Jackson does. And yeah, she has to be, by all means, the favorite moving into Paris, despite the fact she did take bronze in Glasgow. The silver in Glasgow went to Yemi Ogunleye of Germany, and her rise over the last 2 years has been almost more impressive than Sarah Mittens over the last 3.5 years or so. But she was barely breaking 18 literally at the start of 2023. And now she is throwing 2019 and taking silver at World Indoors. She PB'd at World Indoors by over 60 centimeters, and her progression is just building and building and building. And it is incredibly exciting to think about the prospects of what she'll be able to do with this full outdoor season and an Olympic year. Apart from those 3 that made up the podium, you also have Jessica Schilder of the Netherlands, who is currently the world leader. She threw 2033 indoors at the Dutch National Championships, but then struggled a little bit when it came to Glasgow. She had a lot of foul trouble, which was kind of surprising from her. Gong Li Zhao of China is still Gong Li Zhao, just going to find a way to get on the podium no matter what. 8-time world championship medalist, which is ridiculous. Maggie Ewan, also of the U.S., had a really strong season last year, and it wasn't the best season for her indoors this year, but I would not use that at all to count her out moving into the outdoor season. And then one athlete that I think could be a bit of a dark horse when it comes to Paris is going to be Madison Lee Weshie of New Zealand. She is really consistent at throwing really big at world championships. The 3 best throws of her career have been in Eugene, Budapest, and now Glasgow. And she took 4th in Glasgow just behind Chase Ely with a PB of 1962. And she keeps getting just a little bit better and better and better every year. And that combination of consistent improvement and also performing her best on the biggest stage definitely, like I said, makes her a dark horse in a very stacked field in the women's shot put when it comes to Paris this year. In the women's hammer throw this year, I think there's kind of a top 4. You have the 3 Americans in Brooke Anderson, Deanna Price, and Janae Casanavoid. And then you also have Cameron Rogers in there as well. These 4 kind of feel like the most consistent, best throwers at the top of the world right now. Brooke Anderson, I don't know what happened in Budapest last year, but she didn't make it out of qualifying, which was incredibly surprising, especially because earlier in the year, she joined Deanna Price and Anita Vladarchuk as the only 2 women to ever throw, or the only 3 women now to ever throw over 80 meters. Then she had another meet that was like 79-80. So she was the odds-on favorite moving into Budapest. And I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but I don't think it will happen again. Deanna Price is just super consistent as always. Like I said, she also has the marks to back it up. Cameron Rogers is your reigning world champion from Budapest last year, and she is just getting better and better and better every year. And then Janae Casanavoid is just always so ridiculously consistent when it comes to global championships in that mid 76 to high 77 range. The final athlete to keep an eye on in this event is the greatest, probably the greatest female thrower of all time, unequivocally the greatest female hammer thrower of all time, Anita Vladarchuk of Poland. Last year was a bit of a struggle for her, but it makes sense because in 2022, she in over the summer, she tore a muscle in her leg because she chased down someone that was robbing her car. And all I'm gonna say is, imagine for a second you're breaking into someone's car, and then you look up, and the greatest hammer thrower in history is running at you full speed. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be? So she hurt herself chasing this guy down, and she missed Eugene. And then last year was a little bit of a struggle for her, but she seems to feel really good about this year. Now, she does turn 39 like a day or two before the Olympic final, which is pretty old for a thrower. But I mean, she was throwing 78 plus in 2022 before she got hurt. So with a full off season now of healing and recuperating and training, it's Anita Wlodarczyk, so I'm not going to count anything out. It is entirely possible that she could get fully back into that 78 plus form. But for right now, before we see that the proof is in the pudding, I'm going to say that's a bit of a long shot, and I'm putting her just a little bit behind that top four that I laid out. The last throwing event is obviously the javelin throw, and the women's jav is incredibly interesting because it feels like it's one that's been very volatile over the last couple years, where you could have really big favorites suddenly really struggle at world championship meets. And so you never really know what you're going to get when it comes to like what's going to happen in Paris. But throughout the course of the year, the favorites will probably be Haruka Kitiguchi, who is the reigning world champion. She had the world lead last year. Kelsey Lee Barber of Australia, who is she won gold medals in both Doha and Eugene. Last year was a bit of a struggle for her, but she said that she feels pretty good coming into this year. And then you've also got Mackenzie Little, also of Australia, in that mix. Florida Denise Ruiz Hurtado, who took the silver medal in Budapest last year. And then Liu Xing, who is the reigning Olympic champion. And then she took, I believe, fourth in Eugene and sixth in Budapest. I'll double check that. And that really is just scratching the surface of the contenders in this event. So it could go a bunch of different ways. I think for consistency's sake, I would say that Kitiguchi is the favorite right now because she's been really good over the last 2 years. And then also kind of what we saw with some of the ladies in the women's shot put, she's been improving year over year by pretty significant margins. So I think she is probably the favorite moving into Paris, but one big throw from any of these women could completely shift that. One final athlete that I really want to talk about in the women's javelin throw is a little bit like a Johannes Vetter type situation. In this case, it is Maria Andrzejczyk of Poland, and she kind of burst onto the scene as a 20-year-old right before the Rio Olympics. She threw like 67 plus very early on in her career and then managed to come in fourth in Rio. But then she was just hit with wave after wave of shoulder injuries. So the next couple years were really a struggle for her. But then with COVID happening and the Tokyo Olympics getting pushed back a year, she was able to find some good form again. And she opened her 2021 season. On her first throw of the season, she went out to the third farthest mark in history at over 71 meters. And then some of the injuries came back. And so she was battling through those for most of the 2021 season. She ended up managing to take silver in Tokyo. But then after the Tokyo Olympics, it's just been, once again, injury after injury after injury. And there's been a lot of pressure on her as well that has also built into a lot of mental stress. And she had to go through a couple coaching changes. I learned about most of this like literally an hour before I started filming this video. She did a very completely wide open, very interesting, wide ranging interview on a podcast called The Athlete's Zone, which is hosted by former Icelandic javelin thrower Asdis Hjalmsdottir. I will link it in the description. It is very much worth a listen because just the things they talk about are so interesting, and it's such an interesting perspective to get from one of the best athletes in the world and seeing how they kind of deal with adversity on a daily basis for the last couple years. And the last 2 years have been, just competition wise, really a struggle for Andrzejczyk. She hasn't managed to break 57 meters in 2022 or 2023. Last year, she only threw in one competition. But from everything she said in the podcast, she seems to be in a much better place physically and mentally moving into 2024. So she's definitely someone that some people might have forgotten about moving into this new Olympic year, but she should definitely be on your radars, I think, as we head to the outdoor season and javelin starts getting underway. The final event that we will be discussing today, and I don't believe I talked about the decathlon in my men's video, so apologies to Damian Warner and Pierce Lepage and Kevin Meyer. I'm very sorry. But we will be talking about the heptathlon right now because I simply could not talk about the heptathlon while I'm wearing my Go Gators Go Anna Hall shirt. I'm pretty sure I've described like basically every other event as awesome in this video, but the women's heptathlon will be awesome because you got a big three of Nafi Tiam, Anna Hall, and Katarina Johnson Thompson. And those three in the same meet is going to be so cool. Nafi Tiam is a two-time world champion, two-time Olympic champion in the heptathlon, and her personal best sits third all time. She also last year broke the pentathlon world record indoors before needing to sit out Budapest with an injury. So that was unfortunate. But at Budapest, we saw a really great duel between Anna Hall, who earlier in the year moved to third all-time on the pentathlon list and fifth all-time in the heptathlon list. But Anna Hall was going into that meet with a couple injuries, and then she had a flare-up of an injury during the high jump at Worlds, so she was kind of a little bit hampered. Meanwhile, Katarina Johnson-Thompson had a phenomenal 2 days of running and jumping and throwing, including a massive PB in the 800, and just it was an incredibly cinematic ending to an awesome competition. And it was absolutely awesome to see KJT get back on top of the podium after winning gold in Doha, but then really struggling with some injuries over the last couple years. And now this sets us up for a phenomenal clash when it comes to Paris this year. None of these three competed indoors. Anna Hall had surgery a couple months ago, but everything that I've seen on her Instagram seems to be pointing towards recovery going very well. KJT and Nafi Tiam, I think they were just kind of saving themselves for the Olympic year. I don't believe either of them have been dealing with any injuries. So when we get to, hopefully, some of them will be at Gotsis, which is like the big combined multi-event meet in Austria. Hopefully some of them will be there, and then it'll just be so cool when we get to Paris and see all three of them on the track and on the runways and in the circle together. I would definitely say that those three are probably the podium favorites right now. But then there's also 4 athletes behind them that definitely could mix it up and find their way onto the podium with a really good day. Anouk Vetter, as well as Noor Wiets. Wiets is a reigning 2-time world indoor champion in the pentathlon. Adriana Sulik of Poland was poised for a great year last year. She had the world record, I believe, for like 6 seconds in the pentathlon before Nafi Tiam crossed the finish line behind her and took that world record back. So she was poised to do something very big, but then she got pregnant. She gave birth in February. So it will be interesting to see what kind of shape she can be in when it comes to Paris. So we might be looking at a case where this year might not necessarily be her year, but when it comes to 2025, back at Worlds, she'll be able to be fully back in shape. But also, you know, we've seen some crazy things from people giving birth and then getting back in really good shape. She's got about 6 months in between giving birth in the beginning of February and when it comes to the Olympic finals. So anything is possible, but I'd say she's probably the most long shot out of these 4 athletes. And the final athlete is going to be Saga Vannanen of Finland, who took the silver medal at World Indoors. Okay, everyone. Well, that does it for my women's preview. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I feel like it's probably going to be pretty long. And so I apologize for that, but also not really because it's track. So I'm going to talk for as long as I want to. This season is going to be awesome in so many different ways. I use awesome way too much. I need to find a new word. This season is going to be breathtaking in so many ways. I predict probably like 5 world records. That might be a bit bold. I'm not entirely sure what events they would be in right now. Okay, let me say 200. Sharika Jackson, world record. Yeah, sure, that'll happen. 1500, 5K, 10K, 3000 steeplechase. Yes, I think all 4 distance events, so 4 of the 5 distance events, excluding the 800, I think we will see world records in this year because that is how deep the field is. Maybe we'll see a world record in the 100-meter hurdle as well. Probably 5 was not enough. So we'll probably see world records in both the hurdle events too. Wow, what a year this is going to be. I'm so excited. I'm even more excited now that I'm realizing how many world records they could be. It's going to be insane. I am going to touch a little bit on the thing I kind of mentioned briefly in my women's shot put video. I have been offered the opportunity to contribute some articles to Sidious Mag this year. For those of you that don't know, Sidious Mag is probably the absolute best kind of like new age track and field media company. I have absolutely loved like every piece of content they've put out in the last 2 years. They did podcasts live like the day after from Budapest last year, which was absolutely awesome, where they had on like 3 or 4 like newly minted world champions every day, which was just amazing. Such good content, unbelievable. And I am so incredibly excited that I was offered this opportunity. So I'm going to link down in the description, I'm going to link the first article that I posted, which is a shot put preview for men's and women's, and then also a link to kind of my profile on their website that you can use to check out some of my other articles I post throughout the year. This week on Friday and Saturday is going to be the Florida Relays, which I am so excited about. Last year, between the Florida Relays and the Tom Jones Invitational, which are both 2 meets hosted in Gainesville, among the incredible collegiate runners I saw run, which included Julian Alfred, I also saw Noah Lyles, Grant Holloway, Joseph Ambele, Elaine Thompson-Herah, Stephen Gardner, Matthew Hudson-Smith, Jasmine Camacho-Quinn, Toby Amuson. It was Christian Taylor. It was ridiculous. The amount of professionals that come to this meet from literally all over the world. So that's another reason why you should make sure to be following at Paul's Sports Takes on Instagram. Currently posting incessantly over there. And I'm so excited that the outdoor season is getting underway. UF this year is hosting the Florida Relays, Tom Jones Invitational, and then SEC Outdoor Championships in May, which I'm going to lose my mind about. And I'm so excited. This is going to be such a good year in every aspect of the sport, and I cannot wait, if you can't tell. Okay, but this was a lot longer outro than my outros usually are, but that is all for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please follow the Instagram at Paul Sports Takes, and I will see you guys next time.